This is Carl Palachuk. Welcome to the big webinar. Just a couple of notes as people are joining. There's no sponsor for this webinar. I'm not selling anything. So, if you're waiting till the end for that, it's not going to happen. So I'm just, trying to put information out there as I always do. And I want you to know that I've been having a problem with questions lately. So I'm going to try to answer every question that's out there. But the last time I said that, the webinar went 2.5 hours and there were 46 questions still left to go, and the questions kept coming in. So I can't promise I'm going to answer every single question. But here's what I will promise. I will present my stuff and get to questions before the hour is up. So for those of you who've only allocated 1 hour for this, you will be able to complete that hour, and it will be very useful. Okay, and we'll get some questions in. And then for everybody who's willing to stay, I'll stay up to another half an hour if there are more questions. But I'm not going to stay all day because I have other things to do and nobody's paying me for this. So, okay, is that a deal? We'll spend 60 to 90 minutes depending on how many questions we have. I've disabled the chat feature, so questions, the Q&A section is the only place to put in your questions. All righty. So with those ground rules, let me introduce myself and give you a couple more ground rules. So for those of you who've not met me, my name is Carl Palachuk, and I'm the author of lots of books, including Managed Services in a Month, which is now in its 3rd edition. And I believe it's truly the guide to everything you need to know about managed services. And that's not very humble, but that's just what I believe. And it has been the #1 best-selling book on Amazon for the term managed services for more than 10 years. So if you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to go ahead and check out that and everything else that I sell. You should probably buy one of each. Quick announcement. On Friday, 2 days from now, I am having a webinar to introduce and describe and explain the new SMB, or Small Biz Thoughts, community that I'm launching, and talk about what you can expect there, and again answer questions about that. I'm also having another similar launch webinar on June 19th. It will be in the afternoon in the US, so that it is morning on the 20th in Australia and New Zealand. So I want to make sure that folks, no matter where you are, you have a chance to ask your questions and get information about the new Small Biz Thoughts community. We have either 9 or 10 people signed up so far, so it's just recently been launched, so it is going. And I greatly appreciate the people who've already invested, and I look forward to having many more people join us on Friday. And you can find information about that. Just go to my blog, which is at smallbizthoughts.com. Now, in terms of the webinar today, let me just give you a little bit of background. So I started my first IT consulting business in 1995. And I started out having larger clients. For example, Hewlett Packard. I ran their internal tech support in 1995, 96. And so literally taking one client at a time, and then eventually moved to having multiple clients. And by the year 2000, the Y2K rollover, I had a number of clients. I had used the Y2K whatever scare period to actually get a lot of new clients. I help people prep for that. And then shortly thereafter started growing my business in the sense of hiring employees, bringing people on board, dividing up into departments, and eventually grew to have 12 employees and about $960,000 in revenue, top line revenue, when The stock market crashed in 2008 and things started going sideways. So, and we actually survived the recession very well simply because of managed services. In 2011, I sold that company, kind of transitioned it off to my service manager, and then I worked with him for a couple of years. So while he owned the company, we basically, as we told clients, we're going to sit in the same seats, we're going to do the same thing, but we're just going to have different titles. So that's what we did. He sold the business again in 2013. And so in 2014, I started another managed service business and ran that until the very beginning of 2017 when I went on my big roadshow. So in terms of the context of all of this, that's the marketing that I'm talking about, is building those businesses. I did all the marketing for America's Tech Support and obviously for the companies that I owned. And I've helped coaching clients along the way with various marketing campaigns and so forth. I will tell you, I've been reluctant to do this webinar because I don't sell myself as a marketing expert or genius or anything. So all I'm going to tell you is about what I know from building my companies. And obviously there's the book side of things and Great Little Books and Small Biz Thoughts and all that, that unrelated to IT. So I've done that as well. But anyways, I just want you to know, I'm not the expert. I'm not a guru. And so, I'm just telling you what I know. I will say one of the biggest decisions that we made early on was to become Microsoft certified and to push that. So I had a requirement in my hiring processes starting about the year 2000 that every single person who works for me must be Microsoft certified. So that means at least one MCP, one exam. During the small business specialist era, everybody had to pass that exam. So even if you already had another MCP, you needed to pass the 70-282 in order to be able to stay employed with our company. And so every single employee was a small business specialist. And then another big decision we made is that beginning in 2008, we moved to being very cloud-centric. We put every one of our clients onto some kind of cloud offering. Some of you are very familiar with my Cloud 5-Pack, and so many clients went on that. We moved 15 clients to that Cloud 5-Pack the first month that we released it, and then we gradually used that as the centerpiece of all of our sales since 2008. So when you talk about marketing, you always need to talk about the goals, right? Why does your business exist? Why does your marketing exist? And one of the pieces of that is to create an ideal client. So one of the goals for my business is to make my life fulfilled and happy in addition to making money. So money's fine, but you can make money doing almost anything you can imagine. So let's figure out how to make money and make me happy. And so part of that is building the culture inside my company. And a big piece of it is getting clients who I like to work with. And so, one of the weaknesses that a lot of small IT consultants have is they feel like they need to help everybody. You got in this business to help people, which is fine, but quite realistically, you can't help everybody. There are people who can't afford your business. There are people who just insist on not paying their bills, right? There's all kinds of people out there that you don't necessarily want to work with. And so we define some guidelines of who we want to do business with. One piece of that is the money piece, that I want somebody who's going to pay me about $15,000 minimum. So again, think about a ruler and what percentage of that is going to be from hardware and software? What percentage of that is going to be from managed services? And what part of that is going to be from hourly labor? And it has to add up to, 12 inches, right? So for me, the minimum is probably around $900 or $1,000 a month in managed services, and then the rest is going to come from hardware, software, and hourly labor, that sort of thing. So let's see here. So Howard asks if this is being recorded. Yes, so this will be recorded, and if you're on this, I'll send you an email with where it goes. But basically, I'm going to put a blog post on my blog and point everybody to the recording. So I wanted clients who were going to spend money. I also wanted clients who are going to take our advice. I mean, it's bizarre as that sounds. If you have clients that will not buy a firewall, put in a backup system, take care of their own stuff, well, those people are just going to be a pain in the neck, and they're going to be less profitable, and you have to have the guts to just not take them on. I'm not talking about walking away. I'm talking about don't even hire them in the first place, right? So the result of my requirements is that it is not guaranteed that I'm going to take somebody on as a client. I'm going to make choices about who will be my clients. And if you think about it, I wrote a blog post many, many years ago that, we work with millionaires, right? I mean, think about this. If somebody's got a big enough company to spend $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 a year on technology consulting, their company must be big enough to be able to have that kind of money to spend. And if you think about when you get big enough to be able to do certain things, well, virtually all of your clients are over $1 million in revenue. And if you don't know, just ask them. They'll be happy to tell you. But the point is that there's a lot of people who just can't afford your services. And a lot of people waste too much of their marketing time going after clients who can't afford them. So don't do that. Now, one of the goals specifically for the core growth period of my business was to try to get new clients at a rate of 1 or 2 every quarter. So that's 4 to 8 new clients per year minimum. That was during my big growth period. So in terms of thinking about this marketing I'm going to show you and where it fits, that's kind of my goal. Now, one of the funny things is that there were vendors who wouldn't work with me, including Microsoft. That Microsoft early on said, oh, we want you to be a managed partner. Well, I told them what my sales goals were, and they immediately backed off and didn't want to manage me anymore, because for them, a managed partner needs to be looking at doubling their revenue again and again and again. And I was like, eventually that'll happen, but that's not my goal. I don't want to grow so fast that I lose the culture and the piece that makes my business enjoyable. And so, they throw around terms like, lifestyle business or whatever, but okay, fine. I want to be happy, healthy, and wealthy. And if that doesn't fit with your goals, then I don't need to have that. It done me no harm to not be a managed partner of Microsoft or any other vendor. So another major goal was to sell deeper into my existing clients. And you hear this all the time, right? Like, what's your biggest resource that you haven't tapped? Well, it's selling all these new things into clients that you already have. So when we decided we're going to focus on 2 brands of printers, we literally went to every client and said, let us show you these printers and why you should be doing this. So that was an in-house training literally on printers. We just bring printers in and show them to people, do a walkthrough, not really even as a sales pitch, but just a way to tell them this is what we're doing now. We did the same things with phones, with backup systems, with all kinds of stuff. It's sort of like, we're going to do a little mini trade show for you on this technology. And a lot of clients just said yes without asking because they have some kind of relationship with us, so they were okay with it. And then another thing is that we want to educate our clients on what we call the KPE way, KP Enterprises, right? So the KPE way is things like we want you to replace a third of your equipment every year. That way everything's always under warranty, everything just works, right? And we want people to participate in the roadmap process. So you see over on the right, there's a page from one of our newsletters talking about the roadmap, like, hey, have us come in and go through this roadmap process with you. It's included in your managed service billing. And even though it's not a sales process, it ends up educating clients and as a result, selling more into those clients, even though it's not sold as that. So Cole asks, which printers? Well, so we early on adopted HP and then also moved also to go to Brother printers. We have sold back in the day a lot of Epsons because of they were kind of the standard for dot matrix, but when it comes to lasers, and again, it doesn't matter. You pick any printers, and pick, I always think it's a good idea to pick 2 brands for everything you sell and have your primary and your secondary. And that way, you can learn those things and be good at them. But when somebody comes to me and says, oh, I want this, Epson printer, I don't know which Epson printer is best for a work group with 20 people and 3 printers in the hallway, but I know which ones I would sell them in the brands that I carry, right? So it's that kind of thing, plus less training and so forth. So I promise I'm going to get to all the questions, but go ahead and put those in, and I will stop from time to time and answer questions. So the 3 things I want to talk about today are my primary favorite ways of marketing, and that is the monthly newsletter, direct mail, and then doing speaking or training. I also did a lot of other stuff. I did radio advertising for, I don't know, maybe 3 years, and that was fun. And actually, as a side benefit, got to know the guy who produces the radio commercials for the biggest local radio station, news station, and ended up doing some other radio work for him just because I could do a lot of stuff in one take, and there's only one other person at the radio station that did that regularly. I did a lot of work from time to time with other local networking groups, chambers of commerce, that kind of stuff. A lot of people think of a chamber of commerce, but almost every place I've ever been, there's a chamber of commerce for this ethnic group, that ethnic group, this little city, that little city. There's a big chamber and there's a small business chamber, and there's probably 12 chambers of commerce in any decent sized city. And of course, we did a lot of events with Microsoft and so forth. But our primary things that, literally over the life of my business that got me the most and I enjoyed the most were the newsletter, direct mail, and speaking and training. So first, the newsletter. And I know this takes a lot of work and you may need to try to get some outside help with this, but a monthly newsletter is probably the best investment that you can make in marketing. It establishes a regular communication with your clients and your prospects. It gets them to see your message again and again and again. And I had people who literally would cut out pages from my newsletter. They would cut out an article and photocopy it for everybody in the office, and they would pin it to their bulletin board. And from time to time, I would go into, I remember one client, they had like 130 desktops, and I would go in there and there'd be an article from my newsletter on every single bulletin board in the entire company. And I got to tell you, that feels good, but it also means that they're deep into my marketing, right? So the format I chose was 11 by 17. And I don't know what, there's a name for that, and I don't know what it is, broadsheet or something like that. But basically, you fold it in half once, and you have 8.5 by 11. You fold it a half again, and it's a nice little size that you can put little stickies on and put a stamp on it and put it in the mail. And for a long time, I had over 1,000 people on this list, so we did bulk mail for this and had a bulk mail permit. So it went out to our clients and our prospects. And I would say not, and we're going to talk about my lists, but not every prospect, but basically between printing and a little bit of labor and postage cost me about $1 a piece. So it was in the neighborhood of 1,000 of these went out every month. My total cost $1,000 a month. Now that is a lot of money for some people, but you have to remember, you know, if you sell one extra server during a year and you get whatever the profit is on that, $1,000 profit on the server and $2,500 in setup fees, well, then it's paid for, right? And also remember that this is part of your management. This is part of your client communications going back and forth. And so this is a very common kind of front end piece where the first page is all about news inside of KP Enterprises. Oh, we got this award and we got that certification and we hired a new person or we moved somebody into management, whatever it might be. And we, again, because we are Microsoft centric at the time, the Microsoft logo is everywhere. Let me just look at questions here real quick. He hates printers. Okay. Did you write all your own content for the newsletter and direct mail? Jason, so I'm going to say, yes, I wrote all of the content for the newsletter, except when I had a salesperson and asked him to write articles from time to time. And I wrote most of my content for direct mail, although we're going to talk about that and Robin Robbins and some other stuff when we get to that. James, do you still recommend mailed paper newsletters over digital? Absolutely, 100%. The thing about the printed thing is that it does cost money. People recognize that, and the amount of junk mail that you get today is far less than it was 10 or 15 years ago. And so it stands out. And again, it's rare that somebody's going to take your digital email and print out a piece of it and photocopy it and put it on everybody's desktop. Right? That's just not a thing that people do. But a physical paper thing is going to get routed to the right person. It's going to probably get read. And yeah, sometimes it won't. You know, let's assume that every client reads, you know, whatever, 1/3 of the newsletters, or they glance through 1/3 of the newsletters. That's still 4 touches a year. And it's just much easier. I don't know about you, but when I wake up in the morning, it's so easy for me to delete email. I have filters in place and I go to the folder that says, you know, sane later, and I just browse through it. And if anything looks important, I'll move it to my inbox, and then I select everything and delete. Then I go to the sane news and I do the same thing. And so I will delete 100 emails without a thought. But in terms of filtering through paper mail that showed up in my doorstep, I'm actually going to look at it and make a decision of whether or not I'm going to open it. So I'm a big fan of the paper newsletter. So here's our basic formula, which is that the front page is all news about KP Enterprises. Then pages 2 and 3, the inside is, you know, what's new and some tips. And for years and years and years, I had a little logo for viruses, and I had a little picture of a bug, and I would talk about the latest viruses you have to worry about. Today, that's all about, you know, crypto viruses and so forth. And, you know, here's a classic thing. And, you know, a lot of the content for this newsletter is still relevant. You could literally just take it, update a few examples with the latest name of a virus and send it out there. But this is anatomy of a phishing attack, and I can tell by the phone number this is probably 2012 or 2013. But it's the kind of thing where it's truly educational. I'm not trying to sell anything. It's all about just information, and it's the kind of thing that I encourage people right here at the top. Copy this page for your entire staff. This is like how to avoid getting caught in a phishing attack, right? And then the back page is got, half of it is taken up with the mailing information, and then usually there's either a software tip or once in a while there'll be a promotion for something that we're selling. But for the most part, this is not filled with sales materials. This is filled with information, and as a result, people actually open it and read it. So the goal is for the people who are on my list who are prospects, this is truly a long play to basically tell them, hey, as you can see, we're totally focused on business. We're very technically competent. We're obviously professionals. And, basically, we want them to keep a folder with some of this information in it so that when they start looking for an IT person, they pull up that folder and there's KP Enterprises all over the place. And so there are a lot of people who are on our list for years before they became clients. But this thing of giving out good information actually is something that can go, it can last forever. This is a Windows 7 shortcut list, right? But I can tell you, I've done shortcut lists for every operating system since DOS. And this is a favorite thing. People love to learn hotkeys, and again, they cut it out, they put it on their bulletin board. They never use them. They always go and use the mouse instead, which doesn't make any sense to me, but they think that they love hotkeys, right? So anyway, but that's the kind of thing where once we get to the actual sales piece, which is separate from marketing, what will happen is we'll start calling people, and I'll have people say, oh, I've heard of you guys. I might even be on your mailing list, right? Stuff like that. And so it's kind of interesting because they don't even know that they're on my mailing list, but they get this all the time. So for prospects, it's very helpful. And remember, the rule about marketing and sales is that 99% of the time, 99% of the people don't need what you're selling. So you can't be super pushy in sales because most people are going to just turn it off. And in my opinion, content or educational selling is far more effective because people do need information and they do need education, and they know that. So anyway, so that's it for prospects. In terms of clients, I want them to be informed. I really push the propaganda around the KP Enterprises way, right? We're going to meet regularly. You have to have monthly maintenance. You have to, focus on preventive maintenance. We're not going to wait until the printer breaks. We're going to actually monitor things. And when it says that the drum is going to go out soon, we're just going to go ahead and order you a drum. And, it'll literally be sitting next to the printer. Those are the kinds of things that's our way of delivering service. It also includes, hey, if you want to get tech support, you put a ticket in the system. The fastest way to get tech support is to dial our phone number and press extension 1 for tech support, period, end of story. And so we're going to put a ticket in the system, or you can put a ticket in the system. But sending me a text message is never going to get you tech support. Calling my cell phone is never going to get you tech support, right? We have to give them the rules, and this is the place where we can say it again and again and again and again. And so they see that we have a way of doing business. They see that we have an approach to these things. Also, if we ever do have a big promotional campaign or marketing push, we can put that in the newsletter, and the clients are actually going to read it because they're used to reading it. All right, let me just look at questions here. James, do you still recommend mailed? Yes, we already answered that. And David, do you not recommend an email newsletter? I get a printed newsletter, but I changed to email because of the cost and the time to produce a printed. So I don't discourage an email. You just have to know, and again, so I use Constant Contact. You can look and see what percentage of that email is opened. You can see how many people are actually reading it. You can, for some of them, you can get other reports of how long it was open and that sort of thing. But the main thing is, did they open it, and did they click on anything? And if you look at that and you see that most people aren't opening it, a very common open rate for email newsletters is 4 to 7%. So it's unusual. So mine is closer to 20, 21%. I have a ridiculously high open rate. But I think it's because I really work hard to give good content. And so you may have really great content and you may get a higher open rate. But even with that, on my email newsletter, my estimate is that over the course of a month, only 25 or maybe 30% see even one newsletter. Okay, so you just have to be realistic about that. And that's the email newsletter. The printed newsletter, I think it's much higher than that. And of course, I can't guarantee that. I just know that when I do this, I get better results. So it does cost money. At a minimum, you should be doing an email newsletter, but I think it's also useful to do a printed newsletter. And again, you don't have to do it to a big prospect list. You could have the newsletter be only to clients and those who've asked for it. But if you think about, well, do I want to produce this just for my clients? That's a pretty small amount. So anyway, I'm only telling you what I know. So I believe what I believe. Also, the newsletter helps clients see that we're working behind the scenes and that we are paying attention to stuff, even if they don't see us because of managed services. Okay, so direct mail. I am and have been and continue to be and always will be a huge, huge fan of direct mail marketing. When I first started my business in 1995, I did lots and lots of research because I didn't know a thing about marketing. I had worked for big companies and was not remotely involved with anything on the marketing side until I took on a client and had to do some marketing for a website development literally in 1995 when the web was pretty darn new. And so I didn't really know very much about marketing. And so I did a lot of research and came across several books about what is called the long sales letter. And you've seen this. It is, it's kind of in the format that you see on the right. And you get it in the printed mail, and it goes on for 7 or 8 pages. And there's a lot of information. There's true, actual, useful information in there. And then there's a hook. And, the goal is to basically say, contact us and take advantage of this offer. And the weird thing about the long sales letter, and again, there are books on it. It is the oldest successful system for selling that's in existence today. So it predates, this century. It predates last century. But basically in the long sales letter, some people are going to look at the headlines. Some people are going to read it from start to finish. Some people are going to start reading and then they're going to get bored. Some people are going to skip to the end and read the PS first. There's all different ways that people are going to consume it. But what's happening is it's physically in their hands and it's engaging. And so some people literally are going to pick out a paragraph here and there. And so you have different fonts and different formatting and different stuff. And so it's an engaging document. And so I always used direct mail and found it to be very effective and got to be pretty good at it. And then I think I'm just rounding up or rounding down. I don't know. I think around 2005, I saw Robin Robbins at SMB Nation, and I saw her system, and basically her core offering at the time was the classic long sales letter customized for our industry. So she's got letters about why you need a backup or how you can save money with antivirus or protecting your data with a BDR or whatever. And so I signed up for her stuff, and I have received her mailing every month since then. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't like that format and blah, blah, blah. And it's too salesy or I don't know, whatever. But I'm just telling you, there is no more successful tool for making sales in the history of the human race than the long sales letter. And in my opinion, Robin Robbins has perfected this for our community. And you know what she will always tell you is, and I'm getting nothing out of this, so you know I'm not being paid by Robin, blah blah blah. But what she'll tell you is, start with the letter like out of the box. Take out this picture, put in your own picture, put in your own name, put in your own offer at the end, but leave the rest of it and see how it works. And don't question it, and don't say, oh, my clients won't like that, and you know, take out the bold and reformat it, and you know, don't do any of that stuff. See how it works first, and then you can start making tweaks, because she really has produced some letters that just are out of this world, right? And my favorite's always the bad date letter, which if you haven't seen it, right, it is, you know, does your technicians treat you like a bad date and they stop answering the phone and they don't answer your texts and all this kind of stuff. That works really well in Sacramento because we have all these huge corporations around here. HP hires people and lays them off 1,000 at a time, and so does Intel, and so does you know, EMC and Apple and everybody. This is a huge tech area, but when they get laid off, they all become IT consultants for about 6 months, and then they get hired somewhere else and they abandon their clients. And so that letter has made me a fortune. And my guess is, I'm just speculating, but my guess is Robin Robbins' bad date letter has made more money for more people, more millions of dollars in the IT industry than any other single document that's out there. So this is an example of a letter that I put together about my client, Hank, and how, you know, twice in a year I saved his business. And so I wrote this up, and basically I sent it to Robin, and she said, oh, well, here's what you want to do. Pump up this headline and move this over there. We're going to make that bold. We're going to put his picture over here. We're going to do this, break this at the second page, move this paragraph down there. And she Robinized this letter, and it became a very successful campaign for me. So if you are remotely interested, I encourage you to look at the kind of stuff that Robin has. Again, I'm not getting paid for this or whatever, but I am a fan because I completely believe in direct mail, and she is the one who knows how to do this better than anybody else in our industry. Now, having said all of that, the single most important message that you can get out of this entire presentation today is at the bottom of the page. Your marketing is completely worthless without follow-up. So you need to make sure that after you send out a letter or a series of letters, that you contact every single person that got it. If you don't do this, then you've fallen into the trap of believing that you can spend a little money and make a lot. You know, it is literally, if you don't follow up, it's like you're on the football field and you're going to run all the way down the entire distance except the last 6 inches. And if you stop 6 inches from the goal line and you stand there, you will not make the sale. At the end of the day, marketing is marketing, but you have to ask somebody for their money. That's what makes a sale. Marketing is all about who you are and what you offer and why they should do business with you. And, it's all everything that leads up to the sale. Sales, which is not the focus of today's seminar, sales consists of asking people for their money. And so if you don't do the sales piece, the idea that you're going to send all these things out and the phone's going to start ringing it's just wrong. And, you might get the phone ringing. You might get people saying, oh, hurry, quick, give me that offer before it expires. And that is the goal. But at the end of the day, you have to make those outbound calls and finish the sales process. All right, so I got some questions here. Carl, which tool do you use to manage your email? I use Constant Contact, primarily because it forces me to do a bunch of stuff that keeps me within the law. Do you only send one printed newsletter per client, or do you send one per important person? I actually, part of our onboarding process, for those of you who've ever seen my onboarding checklist, is that an administrative assistant in my office asks the client who needs to be on our mailing list. So it might be 3 people, it might be just our primary contact, it might be the owner plus the office manager, but whatever. Whoever they tell us needs to be on the list. We don't want to send one to everybody in the office if they have 20 employees, but we really haven't had that issue. I mean, primarily our primary contact gets it, and then sometimes 1 or 2 more. Brian, are you doing 2 separate newsletters for clients versus prospects? No, the same newsletter goes to everybody because part of it is the discussion of here's some good useful information, and part of it is the discussion of so if you're on our service, you're going to be getting this thing happening for free, blah, blah, blah. And then people will be like, hey, I'm not on the service. I want that thing. Carl, contact by email or phone. Well, unfortunately, and I hate phones, but unfortunately, I believe you have to call these people. You have at some point to make a good faith effort to call them on the phone and ask them if they know that your offer's been made and then it's going to expire. Chris, what are your thoughts on cold calls and stop-ins? I think those are great. I think most people in the IT industry have no interest in doing cold calls and stop-ins, but that is, again, a great way to do sales. But that is sales. And I will tell you, one of the biggest clients we ever got, 75 users, came to us because a friend of mine got into this business. He literally knew nothing about technology. He took some courses. He got a Microsoft certification. He became a small business specialist. So now he knows a little about technology, but he has no practical experience. He knows nothing about sales. But he literally printed up a bunch of business cards, and he picked a neighborhood in town, and he just went into every single office, and he asked a very simple question. Does anybody here want to talk about technology? And he landed a 75 user client that he had no idea how to help them. And so he called on us and said, you have to take over this client because I can't do this, right? I was hoping to get, somebody with 1 computer, and instead I got somebody with 75 seats. So drop-ins and stop-ins and cold calls can actually do that. But the thing is, what I haven't told you is he probably stopped in at 100 businesses before he got that one. But that's what cold calls and stop-ins can do for you. But it's time consuming and it's depressing, right? If you don't like hearing the word no again and again and again for 8 hours, it's probably not for you. Cold calling and stop-ins absolutely work, but they are really hard on the ego. Yes, so Carl and Brian, yes. So the tool that I'm using is called SaneBox or SaneMail, and it's just a tool that it literally goes through and helps you clean up your mailbox, your Outlook on a regular basis. Jason, for direct marketing, did you only send out several hundred at a time, or did you work with smaller batches? We're going to talk about that next. And James, where did I get my content? I basically got it from watching, the technology news, being aware of what's going on. So CNET or whoever would have an article about the latest virus, and I would write up, a summary of that in the format for my newsletter. Johnard, do you contact a prospect before you send email or newsletter to their office? Well, certainly not. So you can send a postage, mail newsletter to anybody, anytime, for any reason, and it's perfectly legal. Email, you need to get their permission. So email is harder to build. People have to opt into your list. But again, we're about to talk about some of the specifics of what we do with the mailing. So here's my basic approach to direct mail. I have 3 lists. I have the current list. So let's say that right now, one of my verticals was accountants and enrolled agents, people who do taxes. And so let's say I get a list for Yolo County, which is right next to Sacramento. And I say, I want to find all the accountants in Yolo County. So I go to, I don't even know the name of them anymore, Info USA or whatever. There's places where you can buy lists, and it's 25 cents a name, more or less. So I want to get, let's say, 1,000 names. Okay, so that cost me $250. Okay, it is what it is. And I get that list, and I am going to do a mailing specifically to them. Okay, but I add them to my core list of clients and prospects. I'm sorry, not my core list, to my big list. Okay, so I have a big list that's basically everybody I've ever put on this list. And then I have a core list, which is clients and true prospects, people that I think might be really good prospects. So the new list goes on to the big list. If people respond in any way or have any interaction whatsoever, I will put them on the core list. So even if somebody says, come in and look at our servers, but then doesn't buy anything, I'm still going to put them on the core list. Okay, so I've got the current little bitty list, and then I've got my core list, which is kind of the longer list for my newsletter. And you can set the rules of, you got to figure out what you can afford for the monthly newsletter. But, let's say that you want to keep it around 200. That's cool. So it costs you a couple $100 a month. But just remember, the smaller that list, the smaller your eventual sales are going to be. And the big list, basically we maintain that because every once in a while, like at Christmas, we send out Christmas cards to everybody on that big list, and it grows every year because I do a bunch of these campaigns. So I might buy a new list 4 times a year, and then we pound on that list, that 1,000 new names, and then we add them to the big list. And then the next year we say, okay, last year it was accountants. This year, let's look at the nonprofits. So, and by the way, there's 2 kinds of nonprofits. There's those that don't have any money, and there's those that have all the money. We only market to nonprofits that are wealthy. So, and which, if you live in a state capital as I do, most of the associations have money. So, all right. So what we'll do is we'll have a small campaign. We'll go with accountants. We send them a 3-letter campaign, and the basic format is, hey, how are you? We're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we got this offer, and you need to call us because we're only going to do whatever, 3 of these network checkups this quarter. So you need to be one of these people to get it for free. Otherwise, we're going to charge you $1,500. And then you call them. So one of the reasons for having a small list is that you're going to call them. It is a 99% waste of money to send out 3 campaigns and not make a phone call. It just is what it is. So basically, once that mailing goes out, we add them to the big list. Anyone who contacts us for any reason goes onto our core list. Our hard cost for this is about $1,000 a mailing because I'm sending it to 1,000 people and I've got postage and printing and whatever. I'm estimating $1 per person per mailing. So a 3-letter campaign will cost about $3,000. Now, out of 1,000 people, let's just be honest. If you did no campaign and you just actually called until you talked to 1,000 people, your chances of selling one of them as a client are actually pretty good. So the $3,000 just sort of ups the probability that they're going to take your phone call. But again, you got to have somebody who's going to sit down and make 1,000 phone calls. So if you can't do that, well, then send out 100 and make 100 phone calls. So it'll cost you a lot less. You're going to have to do that more times in order to get the actual deal closed. But you gotta sell at your pace, right? So I would say, again, big lesson of the day: never mail out something and not follow up. So when I say ask for the ask, in your mailing, in your marketing, you have an ask. For example, contact us to schedule a free network assessment. Contact us for a walkthrough of the BDR system. Contact us for a presentation on how viruses are killing your business, right? Whatever it might be. That's your ask. And so when you pick up the phone, you're going to have to say, look, here's the deal. We're doing this thing. We need you to be involved. Will you please? And then shut up and let them answer. Don't keep talking. So if you're just getting started and you don't know what to do, pick a tiny list. Pick 100 people. And, actually, everything gets cheaper if you only focus on 100 people at a time. So if you literally took 100 people, you could say, well, wait a minute. What if I had the budget of 1,000, but I'm only sending it to 100? That way, at the end, I only have to make 100 phone calls. Well, you could take that larger budget and say, all right, now I'm going to send a mailing in a clear plastic envelope with a free book, right? I'm going to send a mailing that costs me $20, right? And has a letter, and there's no way they're not going to open that thing, right? And so, you can focus on a smaller group of people and spend more money. At one point, I had a mailing that I did where I took an envelope large enough to put an entire file folder in, and I bought colored file folders, that are like bright red, yellow, blue, so forth. And I put a label on there that said tech support. And I put my latest newsletter in there and a cover letter. And, it cost me like $1.50 each to mail these. So I sent it to a small group of people. But I had people who told me years later, I kept all the mailings I ever got for people advertising tech support in the file folder that you sent me with your label on the outside. And when I needed somebody for tech support, I called you. So again, it's a long play. Marketing is a long play. Sales is hey, can I have your money? But marketing can take years. So, you got to do fun, interesting things. And you have to remember that the budget, varies, but depending on what you want to do. Okay, I'm just going to keep going because I want to make sure that I get information in by the top of the hour for people who have to leave, but then I'll take some questions. So again, if you're large, the rule is mail to as large of a list as you can contact by phone in 1 week. Because you can't call and say, hey, remember I did a mailing in January of last year? Like, what? No, I don't remember that, right? So, and that's where services like, I don't know if you've heard of Aztec, but there are services where people will call for you, right? And so as long as they follow your rules, they know what to say, what not to say, they can do these follow-up calls at a reasonable price and get you appointments. And it's not their job to sell. You still have to do your sales. Nobody can sell for you. But they can get you an appointment, right? Which is, half the battle. So this is an example of what I would call a seemingly never-endless campaign. If you have good partnerships, like for example, if you're a Microsoft certified partner, please, 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 please do yourself a favor and look at the partner marketing campaigns that you're already paying for. It's built into your annual fees. So they have campaigns where you can compete. So for example, take this quick mini course on the benefits of the new SQL instances in Azure. Okay, then upload your mailing list and we will send out this postcard which you customize with your offer for Azure services. It has your return address, it goes to your client list or prospect list, and it has your offer. Microsoft pays for the postage, the printing, right, and the professional design of this, right? So letter 1 is your sequence in your 3-letter sequence. Number 2 is the postcard that you get sent from Microsoft. Number 3 is the second letter in your sequence. And then number 4, let's say that you're an HP partner. You can go on the HP site and request an unlimited quantity of their really cool, slick, branded materials. So for example, they might have a whole thing on HP printers, right? Or HP servers, right? Order 500 of them, put your return address on it, send it out to these clients. You don't even have to have a cover letter if you don't want to. You'll probably pay less postage if you don't have any personal communication there. But basically send that to the same list. Again, it's got your name and they see who you are. And even if they throw it away, they're like, oh, there's that KP Enterprises again, right? And then the 5th element is the 3rd letter in your sequence. So, these are 7 days apart. Boom, 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 right? So in basically 35 days, 40 days, they've received all of this stuff from you, right? And then you send them up a note and say, hey, if you want to be on our mailing list, just let me know. And then you've got that request for a contact, and then you're going to follow up with a phone call, right? So if you do something like that, that's like, again, that's like a 40-day campaign. If you do that, wait another month and then do it again, you'll probably end up with 6 or 8 campaigns in a year, depending on, how quickly you do it. What you don't want to do is send letter 1 and wait a month and send letter 2 and wait a month and send letter 3. Once you execute your campaign, it needs to go boom, 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 boom. And you might not do it again for 6 months, but once you start, you need to be on a time frame so that people remember the last letter and the previous letter. So, all right. So before we go on to the next section, holy smokes, 22 questions. You people are killing me. So where do you get to your content? I already answered most of these questions. Good. How often, James, do you send out your newsletter? So my newsletter once a month. And every once in a while, it'll skip for whatever reason. So, 11 or 12 a year. Colm, how do you know the difference for nonprofits? Well, to be honest, with nonprofits, there are those that literally, they start out by saying, we don't have any money. Like you call them and say, I'd like to talk about your technology or whatever. And there are people that are like, oh God, we have these old Windows 95 machines and they whine about technology and it's not core. But then you look at associations that their core goal, for example, is communicating with their members about some important issue, right? And so they need big, massive printers. They need professional duplication equipment, that kind of stuff. So you have to ask some questions about, do you have these technologies, right? If all they have is one crappy old dot matrix printer and a Windows 95 machine, they don't have any money. And they're going to be asking you to give them free computers and whatever. If they send 4 mailings a month to a membership of 8,000 people, they have money, right? And so that's a piece of it. Also, if you look at their website and they are talking about producing reports, and don't forget about our national conference, and just kind of, they will look like they got a lot of stuff going on that costs money, right? If you think about even a nonprofit that brings in and spends $20 million a year, they have a technical support system that you can be part of, right? And believe me, they're out there. It was a huge vertical for us. And again, we're located in a place where a lot of the organizations are actually lobbying the government, right? So they get all kinds of money. Brian, should the CEO do the follow-up if we don't have a follow-up resource? Yes. Yeah. So your CEO, your president, your whoever is the person that's actually going to be making the deal on your side, you should be talking owner to owner when it comes to trying to make the actual sale. David, is there a best day of the week for a client to receive your marketing mail? I don't know. I will tell you this, when you get to larger mailings, no matter what, you're going to go to bulk mail, which means you drop it off and it's somewhere in the next, 4 to 10 days, it's going to show up. So there's a period when it shows up. If you do first class, then it's 2 or 3 days. But you don't really have a control over the day that it shows up in US mail. You do in email. Now, the other thing I'll tell you, just as an aside, I ignore all the advice I get about email. I am told Monday's the worst day to send an email. Don't send it in the middle of the night, all this other crap. I send my newsletter out at 1 o'clock in the morning on Monday, and I get a 20% open rate. So, take advice with a grain of salt. Ben, do you have a good place to buy lists from to send letters? So again, Info USA, if you just put up, Hoover's, I think it is, bought a bunch of them. Just put in Info USA and you're going to get them and all their competitors' advertisements. Roy, I had to drop off to attend a customer at the critical. Yes, there's a recorded version, and I will post up where that's going to be. All right. So speaking and training. So my third, and I'm sorry for folks who have to leave at the top of the hour. I really thought I'd get through this faster, but anyway, I'm going to stick around until we're done. Speaking and training. So my other favorite technique is speaking. And obviously I love this and a lot of people hate it, right? So, but even if you're not good or you don't enjoy it and you don't want to become good, you can actually have other people do the speaking for you. And the easiest example is that if you've got a vendor that has a bunch of people who will go out and make presentations, they might show up at your event and speak on your behalf and then just point to you and say, if you have any questions, ask Bob. He knows everything, right? And he's your local guy. And I've actually seen people who've done that. My friend Josh Liberman, last year I went to an event that he did in Albuquerque, and Datto sent somebody in to make a presentation, and Josh is very good with presentations, so he did one as well. But even if he didn't want to, Datto would have sent somebody to make that presentation for him. And you got to be a big enough partner for them to pay attention to. But a lot of organizations have people that their job is to show up at your event and make presentations. So anyway, so my events I would do for both clients and prospects. And I provide my content. So for example, I would make a presentation. I love to make presentations on antivirus and spam filter because that is the thing that people touch every single day that can destroy their business, right? And it's, I'm not a big fan of scaring people into buying stuff, but those topics are perennial favorites, right? So I put together a presentation. And then often it's at my location. Now, not necessarily my office. For many, many years, I had some racks in a data center, and they had a meeting room that was really super nice, glass walls and huge conference table and all that. So I could easily get 12 to 15 people in there. So I would, have a catered lunch brought in, and I basically get enough food for 20 people and invite all the people from the control room to come in and have lunch with us as we're warming up. And then I'd invite my prospects and clients, and we'd sit down at the big table. And so they see me hobnobbing with the guys who run this data center, and they assume that we're all good friends and whatever. But it was just a really nice, high-class environment. Cost me nothing because I was already paying to have my racks there, right? So providing a location can be as simple as there's a lot of places where a Denny's or some other restaurant is going to have a back room where, as long as everybody buys lunch or you buy their lunch, you get to meet for free, right? Now, at my events, I have to get people in the room. So what I would literally do is I would have administrative assistants call down a list and say, is Mr. Johnson there? Or may I speak with Mr. Johnson? And then, of course, the gatekeeper is going to say, what is this about? Who are you? And the admin would say, well, we're having this lunch and learn next Thursday, and I just need to know whether he wants the chicken or the fish. And I said, I have no idea. Let me put you through. And then he would say, who are you? What is this? Well, we sent you this invitation. I just want to make sure you know. And anyway, we got a lot of people that way. But we also sent out invitations in newsletters. We send out invitations in paper mail. And you probably shockingly have to send out 250 invitations to get 10 people in a room if you're lucky. And you may only have 5 people show up, and that's okay too, because the smaller it is, the more questions you can get to and all that. So, and then I speak at other events. So, for example, I would speak at a Kiwanis Club. I would speak at a Rotary. I would speak at any association. So, the Enrolled Agents Association. Actually, my friend Bob Nietzsche and I had a sort of quote unquote famous presentation, at this one association meeting where I made a presentation and he made a presentation. Obviously, they bought us chicken dinner, but then afterwards, we both got clients out of that presentation. The room sort of divided in half. People who liked the button down came to me. People who liked the Hawaiian shirt came to him. And we both made sales. Even though we quote unquote compete with each other. But, he was talking about security and I was talking about viruses. And so, when you're up there in front of the crowd, even if it's a 15-minute presentation, you're the expert. And so when people say, oh, I have questions about this, where do they go? They go to the expert. And important safety tip, especially with strangers, but even with your own events, always, always, always have a handout. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's got your name and logo and contact information at the bottom. So that this might be the 10 most important things you need to know about antivirus. Okay, cool. But it's got your name on it so that when they take it home and they keep it or they put it on their bulletin board, your name, your marketing is right in front of their face. All right, so here's what you need to make an engagement work. You need clients and prospects. You're going to provide some kind of education. So you have to give value. Like I remember I've done them on what are virtual machines. I did an entire presentation from within a virtual machine on my laptop and then literally demonstrated in because people don't understand what they're looking at, right? This is what it means when I stop the machine and then I restart it and there we are right back in the middle of the presentation. And, a lot of people don't care about that. I mean, they really, really deep in their heart don't care about technology, but you do little things to educate them and make them feel like it's useful in their business. Some kind of food. So whether it's donuts, chips and salsa, or an actual lunch, and that so many times that can be got for cheap. Nowadays, there's so many places that will deliver, and you can call and say, hey, I need the whole deal with, forks and knives and the whole deal. And they'll do it. And at a hotel, what would cost you $50 a person, if you just call a catering company, it'll cost you $20 a person, and they'll do it for $200 for 10 people. It's just really cheap. And then you give a quick pitch, and then you send them on their way. If you have giveaways, either a book on security, or a pamphlet that you've written, or anything, you can give them the latest Daniel Pink book on business, and just leave them with something of value. Obviously, if you got a coffee mug or whatever, give them that and send them on their way. But then follow up with every one of them. When you only have 10 people, there's no excuse not to follow up. And to be honest, there's no excuse for them to avoid your phone call. It's not that they owe you because you bought them lunch, but you did go through this training together. And so anyway. Now, in terms of what you talk about, it could be almost anything that you think is in the news that's buzzworthy. Nowadays, you hear all this stuff about Facebook privacy and the dark web and all that. So, whatever that you can come up with where you've, got some good stuff. I love this ransomware for marketing. I hate ransomware, obviously, but in terms of marketing, it's rare for a month to go by without a major story of, the city losing access to its own databases, or a hospital that had to pay millions of dollars. I mean, those stories are everywhere, and so it's easy to get people's attention around them. So in terms of getting people in the room, you're going to put it in your newsletter, and then all the social media. Of course, you've got your core list. You're going to pummel that. You're going to email people, basically bring out the big guns. And sometimes it's really hard. And to be honest, if people are not paying for this, 50%, you'll be lucky if 50% show up. So even for a free lunch, they got to drive across town. It's a pain in the neck. It's the middle of the day. You'd be shocked at how many people won't take you up on a free lunch. But do what you can to get people in the room. And then in terms of the speaker, it could be you, somebody on your staff, your salesperson, somebody from one of your vendors. I have been paid by people in the Sacramento area to give presentations to the Chamber of Commerce on their behalf, simply because they know I can speak and they don't want to. And obviously I have to know something about the topic, so it's IT related, but you can find people who are willing to speak. And to be honest, if it's not technology related, that's not the worst thing in the world either. I belong to a little speakers meetup here in Sacramento, and I know I could call on that group and find somebody who will talk about HR issues or health benefits, or, there's all kinds of things that people are willing to speak on. And, tap into that, and not necessarily pay them, but, they like the opportunity to have the speaking engagement and push, their book or whatever. And I get to bring people together with education. And then I can say simply on top of that, if you enjoyed this, please let us engage with you, because we would like to talk to you about technology. And so, as long as you provide some value, then it's worthwhile. If you want a sample training of what I do, and I believe I sent these out in the mail before this event, but if not, send me a note and I will get them to you. But basically, I sent links to the place where I have a YouTube recording I think it's about 45 minutes, and it is a sample. I start by talking to you as an IT consultant and say, here's a sample training that I do. You're going to get people in a room. You're going to show them this slide deck, and here's how it's going to go. And then I literally stop. I give the presentation as if it was to end users. And then at the end, I go back to talking to you as the IT consultant. So that's how you do it, and make sure that you download the slides and so forth. And then there's a link on YouTube to the place where you can download a zip file that has that PowerPoint presentation, which obviously you're going to take off my name, put on your name, change the background, whatever. But it's a sample of the kind of thing that you can do for your clients. And prospects. And so, and obviously, it is, as I say at the introduction to that, it was recorded at a point in time, and the examples in safe computing change every week, every month, right? So you're going to have to update it, but it's still a good sample of the kind of presentation that I have done for clients. So now, the other thing that you have to remember, big rule for the day, is you got to have an offer. So the offer could be that we want to give you a free network assessment, or we want to come in and if you sit through this presentation, we're going to give you a Amazon gift certificate, or let us evaluate your backup systems, because we know that about half of all the backup systems in existence are not working. So, what are you going to do when the next flood, fire, hurricane happens? So make sure that you have an offer. There has to be a reason for them to contact you, not just, hey, we're really good. And then only market as much as you can follow up. So if there's any good news for those of you who are shy and hate making phone calls, it is that you only have to do a little bit of marketing to make a difference, as long as you follow up. If you actually call 100 people, you'll be surprised at how many discussions you're actually going to have with regard to technology. So, but you got to do that follow up. And then to be as consistent as you can. So with the newsletter, for example, I would encourage you, if you're reluctant, to try to put together at least the core outline of at least 3 newsletters before you send your first one out the door. And if you can only do it quarterly, that's cool. Start quarterly, and with luck, you'll move to every other month, and then you'll move to monthly. But the more you communicate with your clients using that tool, the more effective it's going to be for you. But start with 3 in the can, basically. And that way it makes it easier for you to keep up, because you can say, all right, I'm going to work on the Q2 newsletter and the Q3 newsletter. And then when Q2 goes out, I'll work on the Q4 newsletter. And that way you're never having to do it at the last minute, before the quarter is up. And all of that builds your brand. And your brand is not your logo. Your brand is not your marketing. Your brand is every single thing you do in your company. It's how you hire. It's how you present yourself. It's how you do the first engagement, right? It's the way that you sell equipment. It's the way that your technicians dress. It's the way that you show up. And so that brand is built through your newsletter and through your marketing. And so, don't think of branding as marketing. Think of marketing as a way to supplement the way that you present every single thing you do in your company. All righty. I saw some questions here. I'm going to lose my voice again. Thanks. Howard asked, was it snail mail? Now, that was so long ago, I forgot the context. Andrew, I may have missed it, but how many sales do you expect to close per 1,000 calls? Ugh, I don't know. So part of that depends on how good of a salesperson you are, what your offer is, all that kind of stuff. Here's what I would say. If you were actually to make contact with 100 people, I would be shocked if you didn't get 3 or 4 of them to at least have a longer conversation, and one of them to probably sit down and meet with you. So if you actually contacted, if you had 1,000 calls, you might actually talk to 200 or 300 people. So you might get 10 visits out of that. Now, in terms of sales, if I ask people, at a cocktail party, if I sat you down in front of 100 people, how many would you close? Most people are going to tell me that they'll close 100. Well, that's just not true, right? So, I did well. If I could actually get an appointment, I usually got the sale, but it absolutely was not 100%. It was probably 60 or 70 if I was lucky. The important thing is to get in there and present your stuff, and let them decide whether or not they want to do business with you. At the end of the day, sales often comes down to, in a service business, do I want to do business with you? And if I say, Andrew, I want to do business with you, when do we get started? you know that we clicked at some level, right? So the number of actual sales, I don't know. But the other thing is, once you start doing this consistently, you've all seen the classic sales funnel. You will begin to put together numbers of, let's say, 1,000 people in this list get 3 mailings each. Okay, so that's 3,000 touches to 1,000 prospects. I actually was able to contact 100 of them on the phone, right? And then I was actually able to have lengthy conversations, meaningful conversations with 3 of those, and I got a sales meeting with 1 of those, right? Whatever your numbers are, they're going to be different than mine or anybody else's. But once you start doing this consistently, then you'll be able to figure out what those numbers are for you, and that actually helps you down the road to know how many people you need to put into the top of that funnel to get that 1 sale come out the bottom. Again, part of this is the long sale. There might be people that you have mailed for years and years and years and years, and they didn't need you. 99% of the time, 99% of the people don't need what you're selling, right? But the day that their IT person falls in love, moves to another state, and can't serve them anymore, you're going to be top of mind, right? So some of it is the sale in terms of you made a touch and they responded to you, and some of it is the long play. Howard, I'm going to have to walk the neighborhood business area and hand out a flyer, half-page thing, looking to build awareness of our presence. Any ideas about content? Well, again, today, I would seriously think about putting together some kind of presentation or something where you can say, look, I've got a 20-minute presentation on how to prevent ransomware in your business. There's only, whatever, make up a number, 3 things, 5 things you have to know and have to do consistently, and we can help you prevent ransomware. Call us for an appointment today. Again, that call to action. And then you can always just have an out, like an alternative sale where you basically say, or if you just want to talk about any technology questions you have, we'd be happy to come in and talk about that as well. I mean, that would easily fit on, a half sheet postcard or whatever. And, leave as much white space as you can. If you're doing the marketing yourself, the main mistake people make is they fill it with all kinds of information. It should have as much white space as possible and just get real clear. People should be able to pick it up and within 3 seconds know what your message is, and they're going to know whether they want to contact you or not. Thank you for the kind words, Andrew. I appreciate that. Oh no, Howard, lots of people are asking questions. And Howard, by the way, loved my roadshow in Baltimore. So, and you don't have to stop. You can ask more questions. So I have roadshows coming up this fall. So for those of you who are not familiar, I'm doing a roadshow. It's about 4 hours on the 25 unbreakable rules of service delivery, and also on some big changes coming up and why the combination of managed services and cloud services is your killer combo. So final note, it begins today. Absolutely nothing happens by itself. You're not going to wake up Monday and all of your new prospects will be knocking on your door asking for demos and people begging you to sign a contract. So you have to do it. You have to be the one to say, all right, what does my marketing plan look like? Where do I start? What will I actually do? At one of the roadshows earlier this year, somebody asked Jennifer Fields, what is the absolute best marketing campaign? And she said, that's easy. It's the one you're actually going to execute, right? At the end of the day, the best marketing is the marketing that you execute. And if you, start small, learn, make the mistakes with 100 people before you make the mistakes with 1,000 people. But, figure out how long does it take you to put together a mailing? Get those 3 letters all done before you send out the first one. When you get to over 250 or 300, then, what does it take to go get a postal stamp so that you can do the bulk mailing and what's involved in bulk mailing? Those rules change from time to time. All of that is just stuff you need to learn. And millions of businesses have done it. You can do it. There's no great mystery there. It's just a matter of you have to do it. So get started today. Howard wants me to come to Brooklyn or Manhattan. I was on Manhattan last year. So actually we had a really good roadshow last year. So, all right. That is what I have for today. If there's any more questions, I will be happy to hang around and answer them. In the meantime, I want you all to go to smallbizthoughts.com and look at my blog and sign up for that webinar on Friday if you haven't already. Alrighty. Other questions? Do you hand address all the direct mails or did you print them out? Oh, no. We had labels. So one of the things is you can feed a list from Excel into Word and fill out labels. Like you tell them that you need whatever the standard label is, that's 3 o'clock cross and 10 down or something like that. You put in the label form and there's a way to just do that and it auto-fills, and then you just have somebody who puts those labels on all of them. If you're sending them out to 10 or 15 people, you could hand address them. They're probably more likely to get opened, but if you're sending out 100 or 1,000, certainly it's not worth the time to hand address them, in my opinion. So, all right. Thank you, Stephen, Jason, James, everybody. I certainly appreciate it to everybody who's here today. So if you have any more questions, I guess we're kind of done with the online questions, but if you have additional questions, my email is on the screen and you can send them to me. I can't promise a quick response, but I'll eventually get back to you. All righty. Thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you all right back here on Friday for the other webinar. Thanks all.